the Shugo of Suruga was quick enough to dodge the Ashigaru's move, but not the one that came from a second attacker, a samurai called Mori Shinsuke, who managed to decapitate the Imagawa daimyo with a single strike of his sword.
Damn!
Yoshimoto's death.
Come on, react to this, react to this. He's been asking me for a while.
Life lasts only 50 years.
I'm finally doing it, man.
Contrast human life with the life of Getten.
Not gonna keep you waiting.
It is but a very dream and illusion.
Any longer.
Once they are given life from God, there is no such thing as don't perish.
Bro, did you make me react to this because of the new Assassin's Creed that just released?
These lines are closely linked to Oda Nobunaga, one of the most famous Japanese people of all time, and the first of the three great unifiers, and the lines are said to be his favorite. Welcome to our first video in our mini-series on the life and wars of Oda Nobunaga. Do you want to command the armies of Oda Nobunaga? The sponsor of this video is a game called Yasuki Black.
No. Garbage.
Via the link in the description.
Game.
See you on the battlefields.
Garbage game.
Born in June 1534 at Nagoya, Nobunaga, or Kipposhi as was his child name, was the eldest legitimate son of his father, the so-called Tiger of Owari, Oda Nobuhide. While only 6 years old, he was made Lord of Nagoya Castle, with Nobuhide possibly wanting to inculcate the traits of independence and self-sufficiency to the young boy, who was destined to become the next leader of the Oda clan. However, and despite being the ruler of a castle, Kipposhi was still a child and would get into all kinds of mischief during his child and teenage years, like running around with peasant boys, while he was especially fond of wrestling and hawking. Such behavior earned him the title of the Fool of Owari, and alienated many of his clan's retainers, who believed that he was ignoring his duties, which in turn led to a succession crisis.
You know what I find weird about kings and generals is he's American. You can tell that he's American, but he pronounces words with King's English pronunciation, and it's so weird. Like the way how you say duty, like that sounds extremely weird when I hear like American accents pronouncing words like how like British people pronounce it, or just people from around the Commonwealth, which are also by definition British too. But you know what I mean.
Nobunaga would have to spend almost a decade fighting against his brothers Nobuhiro and Nobuyuki and his uncle Nobutomo to consolidate his leadership of the clan. At the same time, Owari and Nobunaga were threatened by external enemies, most important of which was Saito Yoshitetsu, the son of Nobunaga's father-in-law Saito Dosan, who ruled over the neighboring Mino province. Yoshitetsu had risen to open rebellion in 1555, after he became aware that his father intended to name one of his other sons as heir. Although Oda troops were sent as aid, Dosan perished in battle, and Yoshitetsu became the new master of Mino.
This is
Thus,
1555.
Nobunaga was deprived.
1555. Ooh, all of this is going on about when the Europeans were now beginning to explore a new world. Interesting. I never really ever wondered what the hell was going on in Japan during the New World exploration, or when the Europeans were trying to circumvent Africa. I thought that Oda Nobunaga was way more earlier, like 1300s type of ordeal, or 1200s, or actually even ancient. I didn't know it was. This is like early modern history, kind of like we're getting to that point. I didn't realize it was that late. Damn.
Of his most important ally. Nobunaga's greatest challenge, however, would come in 1560, when Imagawa Yoshimoto, one of the most powerful daimyo in all of Japan and the ruler of Suruga province, gathered an army of 25,000 men and marched towards Kyoto with the pretext of assisting the failing Ashikaga shogunate, while his true goal was to assume the title of shogun for himself, or at the very least, control the shogunate from the shadows. As the road to Kyoto passed through the province of Owari, one of Yoshimoto's side objectives was the subjugation of the area and his long-standing rival, the Oda clan. When news of Yoshimoto's approaching invasion force reached Nobunaga at Kyosu, he summoned a war council to decide upon the strategy he would follow. His senior retainers, scared of the enemy's numbers, advised the young warlord to stand fast and defend Kyosu Castle. Nobunaga remained so indifferent to the intelligence he had been delivered that some of his followers even started doubting his sanity. On the following day, however,
Bro, Odin, you are so real for that. You are so freaking real for that. Like, people will panic so quick. Personally speaking, like, it's something that I just noticed about people. Just panic, man, too much. And it's like, ugh, shut up. Like, calm down. But honestly, like, low-key, like, that's so relatable.
the catatonic Nobunaga of the previous evening gave his place to a highly energetic general. He mustered his troops, around 2,000 Ashigaru, his samurai retinue, and a few horsemen. Unconcerned that he was going to face an enemy 12 times the size of his own army, the Oda daimyo famously chanted a few verses from the Atsumori, donned his armor while having breakfast, and then rode out of the castle with his small contingent to meet his enemy in the open battlefield. On the other hand, Imagawa
Swear Japanese are so drippy, bro.
Yoshimoto had made camp at the gorge of Okehazama and acted as if he'd already won the war, indulging himself in the head-viewing ceremony called Jiken. While Yoshimoto was busy congratulating himself for a war he had yet to win, Nobunaga's scouts, who by now had arrived near Okehazama, reported to him the location of the Imagawa camp. Knowing this was the opportunity he needed to win, Nobunaga acted quickly. He ordered his men to make straw scarecrows and dress them, as well as to place a large number of flags and banners to fool the Imagawa troops into thinking he had set up camp there.
Yo! That is so freaking genius. Oh, this guy is smart. Oh, he's smart. Oh, he's like unconventional. Okay. Okay. I can see why this guy became a legend now. I swear, every single person that has a reputation of being like smart, like Hannibal, right? Hannibal, I'm trying to think. I think Alexander too. Well, yeah. I'm trying to think. No one else can't come to mind quickly. Caesar, would I say Caesar? I don't know. I think Caesar is kind of overrated. In my opinion. I still think Caesar's kind of overrated. Who else? Napoleon. Yeah, I would say Napoleon. Who else is very well known for being like a great conqueror? Oh, Khalid. Khalid bin al-Wahid. Yeah, I would say him. Yeah, they're all unconventional. Like, they always think unconventionally. Like, that's basically my point. Like, anytime... Oh, the Mongols too. The Mongols were extremely unconventional as hell. But, yeah. Any great conqueror has always been unconventional. Like, so, I already see where this is going.
When this was done, he led his men around Nakajima Castle, using a dangerous route that passed through rice paddies that would leave them exposed to an enemy assault. However, luck was on Nobunaga's side, and the Oda troops reached their objective, a hill that overlooked the rear of Yoshimoto's encampment undetected. It was now afternoon, and the storm that had been gathering finally broke out. The downpour forced the Imagawa soldiers, most of them now drunk by celebrating all day, to return to their tents. Under the cover of the heavy rain and the sound of the thunderstorm, the Oda samurai and Ashigaru furiously charged the invaders, taking them completely by surprise. The ensuing melee was more of a slaughter than a battle, as the dazed and shocked Imagawa forces were unable to form any meaningful resistance.
Damn.
Hearing the commotion, Yoshimoto came out of his tent only to be immediately attacked by an Owari spearman named Hattori Kohita. The Shugo of Tsuruga was quick enough to dodge the Ashigaru's move, but not the one that came from a second attacker, a samurai called Mori Shinsuke, who managed to decapitate the Imagawa daimyo with a single strike of his sword.
Damn!
Yoshimoto's death was the final nail in the Imagawa army's coffin,
Damn!
which turned tail and was completely routed from the battlefield. The Imagawa forces in the vicinity promptly returned to Tsuruga, abandoning the Oda castles they had conquered just a few days before. Okehazama and Yoshimoto's death was the end for the Imagawa as a clan. His 22-year-old son and heir, Ujizane, was an aesthete and had little head for military thinking and strategy. Sensing his weakness, one of his vassals, a man named Matsudaira Motoyasu, prepared to switch sides and join the Oda cause under the rising star of Nobunaga.
I've heard of the Tokugaku Ieyasu. I can't pronounce that, but I didn't know that's how that started.
Whose fame had now spread across all of Japan. The strategic location of Mino was so important that it was said whoever controlled it would rule Japan. It was natural then that Nobunaga's next goal would be the conquest of his neighboring province. When Yoshitetsu passed from illness in 1561, Nobunaga found the chance he needed to attack. The campaign to wrestle control of Mino from the son and heir of Yoshitetsu, Saito Tatsuoki, would last 6 long and bloody years. By convincing various Saito retainers to abandon him, and through the ingenious achievements of Kinoshita Tokichiro, the man who would later be known as Toyotomi Hideyoshi, at Tsunemata and at the siege of Inabayama Castle, Nobunaga managed to conquer Mino. He promptly transferred his seat to Inabayama, which he renamed Gifu, while also making a new seal with the inscription Tenkafubu, meaning rule the empire by force, thus unveiling his ambition to unify.
Anyone knows how to speak Japanese? Like, how hard is it to speak Japanese? No. How the hell do you read Japanese letters? Let's go back real quick. Trying to. How do you read this? How in the world do you? I see like these East Asian inscriptions, and it's like, how the hell do you read that? Like, I remember I was reading a Chinese person talking, and he was like, Europeans should be happy that their languages have alphabets, because he was talking about how Europeans and their extremely, Eurocentric logic. He was saying that, they think that languages are hard just based on endings of words, aka case systems, right? Because Indo-European languages are usually just based on case systems. And he was saying that, Europeans would base a language's difficulty based on that. Because, they're extremely like Eurocentric, right? That's all that they're used to, right? But he was like, bro, East Asian languages, built different. Built different. That was when he said Europeans should be really glad that they have an alphabet. And I thought about that for a while. I still think about it. I'm like, when you really and truly think about it, case systems are not that hard in a language in the grand scheme of things. Like, I hear Europeans would be like, oh, this language is so hard because it, like, the case system is like insane. like usually people would usually say that for languages like Russian or German. What other popular languages do people say is freaking hard? People say Polish is hard as hell too. I would say Hungarian is like the hardest language in Europe, but Hungarian isn't in the European though. Hungarian is Asian, is all the way from the steppes, man. So really, actually, that actually goes back to what I'm saying right now, that Indo-European languages are like not as difficult as people make them out to be. Actually, now that I think about it, like the most hardest language in Europe is all the way from, well, Asia. Central Asia. Well, I don't know the exact origins of Hungarian people, but I do know that they came from the steppes. They originated from the steppes, right? But yeah, man, it's like I know a friend from the Caribbean who learned Japanese. Actually, he's fluent in Japanese. My brother offered me to go to Japan with him next year. Yeah, because he's like my brother's best friend. And my brother walked up to me. He was like, "Yo, you want to go to Japan with me next year?" I'm like, what? He's like, "Yeah, bro, we're gonna go to Japan. We could use somebody else." And he was like, I was like, all right. Yeah, he's fluent in Japanese, man. But he was learning that for so many years, bro. So many freaking years, man. And he actually lived in Japan for a while, for like 2 years. So that's how he was able to practice and master his Japanese. But that's impressive as hell. A freaking Caribbean person all the way from the freaking Caribbean is able to freaking go and be fluent in Japanese. You don't see that every day. Right? You know, with European languages, it's like meh. And I know people are gonna probably go type in my comments and say, "Oh, but there's other aspects of European languages that are hard." And yes, yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. But overall, yeah, European languages aren't that hard. And before you go comment something like, "Oh, why don't you go study one of the hard languages?" Technically, I am studying one of the notoriously hard European languages. I'm teaching myself how to speak Russian, which is for English speakers level 4 in terms of difficulty. So, yeah, there's some difficult aspects to it, but overall, it is really not as hard as people say. It's not as hard as people say. No, that's a whole different topic, but this is a bit about Japan. But I'm just giving an example before you go and say something along the lines, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about because you haven't experienced the European languages." So I'm experiencing it right now. No, if you're asking, "Oh, well, can you speak Russian? Can you make Russian sentences?" Kinda. It's like I know words, but like I could say like, let me see, just a quick something before I'm paused. Like, "Я смотрю video" or whatever the hell, just off the top of my head. I don't want to like keep this too long and go off topic. This is about Japan, but maybe I'll talk more about that in my actual videos about Russia and all that fun stuff. But that I said that with a very thick accent there. But if you know how to speak Russian, you should know what I just said. I said I'm watching video. I think it's actually more like "Я смотрю это video" or something like that. But the only difficult thing about Indo-European languages is getting used to the accent, right? That is one difficult thing about Russian, is that my accent is very thick. But honestly, it's like I don't even care as long as I'm understood. I don't even think accents matter that much when it comes to languages. To me, languages is more like if you're understood. You shouldn't have too much of a thick accent that you just sound horrible. But you know, if your accent is like too thick, then yeah, like that is, because I see like Europeans do this a lot. They're like, they care so much about accent. And I'm like, bro, that does not matter. All right, let's go and pause.
Meaning rule the empire by force, thus unveiling his ambition to unify the land and the means by which he would achieve his dream. Following the conquest of Mino, Nobunaga sought to strengthen his position and to also acquire a clear path to Kyoto that would allow him to meddle with the politics of the Ashikaga shogunate. To that end, he arranged for his sister, Uichi, to marry the lord of Omi province, Azai Nagamasa. A year later, the opportunity to finally get involved in shogunate affairs and seize true power for himself revealed itself in the face of Ashikaga Yoshiaki. Yoshiaki was the brother of the murdered shogun Ashikaga Yoshiteru, and had come to Gifu to plead with Nobunaga to help him oust his brother's murderers and instate him as the ruling shogun. The only obstacle that stood between Nobunaga and Kyoto was the Rokkaku clan, which was defeated after the Lord of Owari launched a rapid attack against their castles. The war with the Rokkaku would continue until one of Nobunaga's most famous generals, Shibata Katsuie, would defeat them in 1570. But for now, the road to Kyoto was open. In November 1568, Nobunaga triumphantly entered Kyoto, expelled the Miyoshi clan that had up to that point controlled the shogunate, and installed Yoshiaki as the 15th Ashikaga shogun. In a shrewd political maneuver, Nobunaga refused all titles the grateful Yoshiaki offered to him, realizing that accepting a title that would formally place him under the shogun would undermine his own power and show that he recognized Yoshiaki as his superior. In the following years, and as Nobunaga's power continued to grow, the relationship between the shogun and the Odo warlord would sour, and Yoshiaki would secretly form an anti-Nobunaga alliance. In 1570, wanting to demonstrate his unmatched political and military strength, and in an effort to weed out rival daimyos, Nobunaga pressed the new shogun to call on all the lords of the land to travel to Kyoto and attend a banquet. When the head of the Asakura clan, Yoshikage, refused, he was declared an enemy of the shogun and the emperor, and Nobunaga quickly raised a large contingent to attack Echizen and punish the insolent daimyo. Marching through Azai territory, he reached the Asakura domain and set siege to Kanagasaki. However, the tables would soon turn against the Oda, as Nagamasa declared war on his brother-in-law, deciding to honor instead his family's alliance with Asakura that was several generations old. The anti-Oda alliance grew, with the Rokkaku and various Iki sects joining forces with the Azai and the Asakura.
Oh, hell no.
With defeat imminent unless he acted fast, Nobunaga decided to retreat from Kanagasaki. But in July, he would launch another campaign, this time accompanied by his Tokugawa allies and targeting the home of the Azai, the castle of Odani. On the 30th of the same month, the combined Oda-Tokugawa forces met the Azai Asakura at Anigawa. Though the Azai troops managed to push the Oda back at first, the tide turned around thanks to the seasoned Mikawan soldiers of Tokugawa Ieyasu. The battle was a clear victory for the Oda-Tokugawa alliance, but it was inconclusive, so Nobunaga decided to not lay siege to Odani and instead pulled back his forces. He would redirect his forces and his wrath against another enemy, the Iko-Iki and the fabled warrior monks. The militant Buddhist monks, and especially those of Ishiyama Hongenji, would prove to be one of Nobunaga's toughest opponents. The Hongenji was the cathedral seat of the Iki, so to speak, and its temples were well protected by a large network of fortifications. Nobunaga's generals set siege to the temple complex in August of the same year. However, the siege would last for a decade, partly because of the strength of the fortifications, the determination and fighting prowess of the defenders, and partly because of the Mori clan of Aki, who used their superior naval forces to break the blockade and resupply the besieged monks by sea, until in 1577, Hashiba Hideyoshi managed to effectively cut off the supply route to Hongenji.
To get started in data analytics.
While his generals were besieging the headquarters of the Iko-Iki, Nobunaga himself was leading campaigns elsewhere. In May 1571, he besieged the second greatest Iki stronghold, the fortress of Nagashima. The Oda samurai tried a frontal assault, but their horses became stuck in the mud of the river and the traps the monks had laid.
Who the hell does a frontal assault with horses on fortified? Bro, what the?
In turn became easy targets for the experienced Iki gunners.
Was so dumb.
As if that wasn't enough, the defenders opened a dike and flooded the area, drowning many of the Oda troops and forcing Nobunaga to retreat. 4 months later, the Fool of Owari would earn himself another title, that of the Demon King, when he besieged and completely burned the monastery of Enryaku-ji on Mount Hiei, killing mercilessly the monks, women and children who were unable to escape. The ruthlessness Nobunaga demonstrated against the Buddhist monks would only earn him more enemies, as in 1572, the ruler of Kai province, Takeda Shingen, who was a devout Buddhist, would join the anti-Oda coalition. Urged by Shogun Yoshiaki's requests for aid, the Tiger of Kai, as Shingen was called, gathered his troops and marched towards Kyoto. His first obstacle was Nobunaga's trustworthy ally, Tokugawa Ieyasu, who suffered a crushing defeat at Mikatagahara in early 1573. Despite losing the battle, through the use of stratagems and night raids, which were led by the famous shinobi Hattori Hanzo, Ieyasu managed to fool Shingen into thinking that his army was still in.
I know shinobis were a real thing, but bro. Shinobi, bro. Every time I hear that word, I just have to think about Naruto.
Fighting shape. Fearing a counterattack, the Takeda would retreat, and their threat would temporarily be neutralized as Shingen passed away 2 months later. With the threat of the Takeda now gone, Nobunaga decided it was time to tie up loose ends. He first targeted the Iki stronghold of Nagashima that resisted him 2 years earlier, and in July he attacked the militant monks once again. Once again, however, he would face defeat. Spurred by Nobunaga's second failure against the monks of Nagashima, Yoshiaki decided to rebel once more against his protector in the first week of August. This time, Nobunaga would not forgive the shogun for taking up arms against him. By the end of the month, the Ashikaga shogunate would be no more, as the Oda forces easily crushed those of Yoshiaki, who after surrendering shaved his head and became a monk until his death in 1597.
That is mad!
Nobunaga had brought down the shogunate, but he would not follow the established practice of previous clans like the Miyoshi or the Matsunaga, who elected replacement shoguns and manipulated them behind the scenes. Instead, the Demon King would rule as the de facto shogun, despite not being able to formally acquire the title, as it was reserved only for those of Minamoto descent, whereas the Oda descended from the Taira clan.
So it's the same logic as the Mongols, but in this case, homie did not care.
Losing no time after toppling the Ashikaga, Nobunaga gathered his army and marched north to settle the score with the Azai and Asakura clans. When Nagamasa realized the Oda army was approaching Odani, he sent a letter to Echizen asking for Yoshikage's assistance. The latter, after assembling his army at Ichijodani, marched through the mountain passes and encamped at Yanagase, just a few miles from both Odani Mountain and the Oda camp. However, the allied armies were unable to link up or coordinate their actions, much to Nobunaga's satisfaction. Seizing the great opportunity that had presented itself, the Oda warlord left a small contingent to continue the siege at Odani, and with the rest of his forces attacked the Asakura positions, soundly defeating them. Pressing on his advantage, Nobunaga pursued his retreating enemies all the way to Echizen, where he easily captured Ichijodani Castle. Yoshikage found refuge in a series of mountain temples, but was soon betrayed by one of his own clan members and was forced to commit seppuku. After facing his vassal Nobunaga in charge of his newly conquered province, Nobunaga returned to Omi. Odani was a formidable fortification, but once again, Hashiba Hideyoshi proved himself a master of siege warfare. Seeing that the castle was about to fall to his enemies, Azai Nagamasa sent his wife and daughters to Nobunaga for safety. After all, not even the Demon King would harm his own sister. After saying his last farewell to his beloved Uichi, Nagamasa committed ritual suicide in the Flaming Keep.
Jeez.
Nobunaga had once again triumphed, but this wasn't the end of his campaigns. His enemies were still many and still out there.
I don't know, he looking
the militant
thick, though. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, look at that. Look at that.
So Nagashima and Ishiyama Hongenji still defied him. The Takeda, despite Shingen's death, were still not defeated and were...
So wait, hold on a question. Before this ends, who the heck was the shogun? Like, what was the purpose of the shogun? If Japan wasn't unified, what the heck was the role of the shogun?
Were bound to return.
Answer that if you can.
To the northeast, in Echigo, Usugi Kenshin, the god of war as he was called, posed a serious
god of war? I gotta see this man in action.
Threat. While in the west, in Chugoku, the mighty Mori ruled. If Nobunaga was to realize his dream of uniting all of Japan, he would have to conquer them as well. Next time, we're going to talk about Nobunaga's later years, his triumph over the Takeda at Nagashino, his clash with the Dragon of Echigo, the pacification of Iga, and his ultimate downfall at Honnoji. So make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting, and
Yo, this is actually good. Nothing Eurocentric. I honestly enjoy watching things that aren't extremely Eurocentric. So this is really enjoyable, really and truly. Not like I have a problem with like Eurocentric stuff. It's just I'm so exposed to Eurocentric things that it just kind of, you know, it's like the same old. You know, you want to try, you want to try something new. But look, man, if you have any suggestions like this and you're new to my channel, comment down below. Make sure you subscribe, turn on the bell button. If you're an active viewer of mine and you want your suggestions to be done much more quicker, man, considering joining the channel membership for as little as 99 cents a month, where you'll be top priority above all others, and a list of other perks that I talked about on my channel membership video that I'm not really going to repeat here. But if you're just interested in it, the main things I will keep on saying is your suggestions will be done quicker, and I will be responding to your comments a lot faster. And not only that, but I will be replying to your replies, because really and truly, most people, I don't reply to their replies because usually A, I'm working, B, I'm doing something outside of work, C, I'm just busy. Okay, like I'm just busy. Believe me, like I am. Hell, I don't even like talk to the friends I still have that much. Okay, so that's goes to show you how busy I am. But anyways, man, make sure to like, subscribe again, turn the bell button on, check out my other videos. I think I'm gonna like this series a lot. I think I'm gonna react to more of this series, honestly, because this is fun to watch. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.